Welcome and greetings, basketball fans. Glad to have you all back on another installment of Business Casual Basketball. This is 153, and here we are. We're at a few days into free agency here, 2021. It's been quite a whirlwind. So many signings, a lot of trades. This is directly following the draft. Summer League is in full swing, so the NBA world's on fire right now, and it's a fun ride. It's a lot to take in. So to do this, I wanted to bring in somebody that can kind of help me dissect these signings and kind of make sense of what all these teams have been doing in free agency so far. So joining me on the podcast here is Jake Fisher. He works for Bleacher Report. He has a book actually that he wants to kind of promote on this podcast. So if you guys are watching this live, I have the link up to the Amazon page where you guys can purchase this book. So as you can see, it's Built to Lose: How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. So this is a great resource if you guys want to just check out and see exactly how the tanking has kind of evolved and moved on, progressed through the history of the NBA. So I'd highly recommend this. Jake is a great writer, has a lot of great work out right now that you guys can check out. But in all the madness, man, I forgot to just ask you how you're doing specifically and how this offseason has treated you. I hope everything is well on your end. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to join me on this podcast, man.
Yeah, man. It's thanks for having me. I'm doing okay. I'm a little tired, I'm not gonna lie. It's been 32 weeks of reporting a bunch of stuff, but
Yeah, I feel that.
people have appreciated the work. So it's all good, and keep fighting the fight another day. How about you? How are you doing?
That's right, man. Same here, man. Same here. It's a busy time, but it's a good time as well because it's kind of this busy era it just kind of reminds us that the league never stops. It's like a 24/7, 365 thing. It has its pros and cons, but ultimately it's just a fun ride, man. It's just like you're on a roller coaster ride, and you get up to the apex, and you're on your way down just having a ball. So things are good over here. And I was off last week for the podcast, but back on this week, excited to kind of talk about free agency. I've had a lot to get off my chest, and I'm excited for the platform to be able to do that. So for sure. So yeah, I will get over to a couple of sponsors we have here for Unwrapped Sports before we kind of dive into the content. So if you guys have been on, you guys know about teespring.com, where we have some apparel you guys can purchase. We have some accessories as well for each of our different podcasts. So for me, I have a t-shirt you guys can purchase as well as stickers that are available. So that link is going to be teespring.com/store/unwrapped down there at the bottom. If you guys want to check that out and purchase some of our products, we greatly appreciate it. Another way you guys can support us if you like is patreon.com. So at /unwrapped sports, we have 3 different VIP levels that you guys can join to help us kind of support our podcast. The third of which, the highest tier level, enters you guys into a kind of a raffle to win some signed memorabilia and some other really cool benefits. So head over to that webpage if you guys would like to support us. We really appreciate it. And we're glad to have you guys on board as we're trying to bring you the best sports content on the internet today. We also have mybookie.ag, so they're heavily involved in the betting game. I'm sure a lot of you guys are ready to dive into betting. And if this is your first time, you can use the code USN100 to get 100% up sign-up bonus. So your first deposit is going to be doubled, and you're going to get a head start into the game. So Olympics, we're getting into Summer League. All kinds of sports are in full swing. So be sure to check out that link and that code to get started today. You don't want to miss out on the money that can be won. And then lastly, we have RX Hemp. RxHemp.com is where you want to head over to use that code RxHemp USN. And that's going to give you 10% off your entire order. So there's recovery products over there. There's some special recovery cream you guys can use if you're trying to get back on your feet after basketball. That was me the other night. I hadn't played in about a month plus, and that stuff would really help me out. And I'm sure as I'm sure it would help you guys out if you're trying to get back into basketball and different sports. So check out the link down there, guys, and the code if you're trying to get some of those products. So we're ready to dive into free agency here, Jake. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the biggest surprises that have stood out to us during free agency. I have a few in mind here that I want to shout out. I want to first get your opinion on the DeMar DeRozan signing for the Chicago Bulls. That looks like it's turned into a sign-and trade deal. 3 years, $85 million plus, as reported by Shams on Twitter. And I guess I'm a little surprised by the amount of money. It looked like for a minute that he was going to take the mid-level exception. Obviously, that didn't happen. He got his money. and he's going to a team that is looking to contend for a playoff spot. So how would you break this down? Is this fair money for DeRozan? Is this a good destination for him? What were some of your initial reactions when you saw the news kind of break on Twitter and the ticker go across your screen?
Well, I think, all along Chicago had a main goal this summer of getting more playmaking ability in their half-court offense. And, at the start, that was Lonzo Ball. I mean, they had a major interest in him back at the trade deadline. And, we're having framework discussions back then and knew that, I think it was pretty clear on the league that they were going to be a team that was right front and center making the play at Lonzo Ball and restricted free agency. And I think from there, over the weekend before Monday, the Bulls kind of, there was starting to be some sense on the league that the Bulls might have been a little concerned that maybe the Pelicans would match. And I think in that regard, that's when they started looking at DeMar DeRozan possibilities. I'd heard that they even reached out to Dennis Schroeder to do Dennis Schroeder intel and to do Rashawn Holmes intel and, collecting stuff on DeMar, thinking, what if the Pelicans do match on Lonzo, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the Bulls' original plan was to sign Lonzo to this deal and to bring in Derrick Rose at their full mid-level. Derrick Rose ultimately ended up going back to New York, of course, at a number a bit higher than the mid-level.
Right.
And made that deal with Alex Caruso pretty quickly. And I think from there, when you've already started exploring potential sign trade opportunities for DeMar DeRozan in the event that you lose Lonzo Ball, well, if you've got Lonzo Ball now, maybe that's even more of an intriguing opportunity for a veteran like DeMar, who is said to have interest in wanting to go back to the Eastern Conference to get back into the All-Star game conversation and is looking for a payday and looking to compete. And now that you've got, a number 2 overall pick type point guard in Lonzo to pair with 2 All-Stars in Zach LaVine and Vucevic, like maybe now it's an opportunity for DeMar. And I think that's where the Bulls went and saw this chance to go get the guy that they, really thought that could move this thing to the next level. So I wasn't surprised when the news happened. I think, there was a lot of opportunities for DeMar to go. Excuse me. There were a lot of opportunities for DeMar to go different places, and Chicago just appeared to be, the best outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are really good points. And I guess maybe I don't know if I was out of touch, but I hadn't heard that the Bulls were seriously kind of looking at him, but I knew they had a lot of options in mind since they had aspirations to make the playoffs. So I kind of expected they would make a splashy signing. As it turns out, they've made several already, and just all in that pursuit of a playoff spot. It looks like that's their ultimate goal. So I've seen from different people, there's different ways to look at what they've done so far. This is kind of like going in a little bit to the next section, but I see them as a winner of this offseason in terms of what they're trying to do, which is make the playoffs. Now, if you want to go big picture and say what's their ceiling and things like that, maybe you can kind of twist it and say like it's not going to get them to that level. But I think overall, if we're just trying to look at what they were trying to do last season, which was make the playoffs, it didn't quite happen. They want to take another step forward. I think bringing in DeRozan does fit the bill. Now, of course, there's going to be questions about the fit. You mentioned his playmaking ability. I think that's going to help a lot when it comes to just kind of helping out the surrounding pieces like Zach LaVine, having him maybe be able to play off the ball a little bit more. But yeah, I guess I was a little surprised by the destination because I'd heard all about the Lakers and I'd heard that the Heat were going to try to make a run at him. But I guess ultimately, since he upped that price tag up to like a near maximum deal, they kind of priced out those other teams. And then that's where Chicago kind of swooped in because they had the room to acquire him.
Yeah, I mean, don't beat yourself up for not hearing every rumor. I just
there's a lot of them.
That's what my job is right now. I'm on the phone with execs and coaches and agents all day long. So definitely privy to a bit of information that I try to bring. That's what my job is, So, but yeah, I wrote that a bit on Monday morning or afternoon that the Bulls had done some intel work on those guys, but it wasn't a very loud rumor because people did think the Lakers were in play and that Miami was trying to make a run at him as well. So I think that came together relatively slowly, but when it did, it got finished fast.
Oh yeah, definitely. It kind of hit hard. But it's nice, I guess, to have that inside access. You're kind of a fly on the wall and you can kind of hear the whispers and you have that advanced knowledge. So glad that you guys are able to bring us the content. before it happens so we kind of understand exactly what these teams are talking about. But if we're kind of going a little bit across the way, so we're looking at maybe like a smaller deal that was a little bit, it was surprising for me. It was definitely a bargain. It's one of the minimum deals actually that was signed in free agency. This is Malik Monk going to the Lakers. For a guy that was um, coming off of just a few years in the league, a lot of us would think that, in his early 20s, he'd be looking for a payday. He's coming off a rookie contract. He wants to really cash in. But as it turns out, he kind of twisted the idea on its head, and he's going to a place where he can win. But also, I think a part of this that is really going to be beneficial, even though he's losing out on money, is his ability to get a lot of exposure and to be able to use the, let's just say, 40 national TV appearances or something like that the Lakers will have next season to his advantage if he can play a good six-man role or maybe start at some point. If he plays well, he's going to get some major offers next summer as he comes into free agency. For me, that was surprising. For a guy that young going to an established team where he's going to take a pay cut, that's pretty cool. I respect it. Did you hear any kind of whispers about that, or were you as surprised or kind of just hit from the left field like most of us were?
Malik Monk's agent is Jeff Schwartz, who represents Andre Drummond, and Andre Drummond signed with the Lakers in the middle of the season on a one-year minimum deal to try to make good and get into free agency and be in that playoff environment. I think it makes sense. So that's what Malik Monk would do here. Sure, guaranteed money and long-term money is the goal of every player and agent here, but also like the flexibility to make the most money when you can, and you want to hit the market at the right time when there's a lot of teams with cap space and when you're at your peak of your value. So for him to get out of Charlotte, where only made a play-in tournament appearance, right, and lost. That was a pretty brutal loss as well. You go from there to now the Lakers, where the spotlight will never be brighter. You're playing alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook. It's a great opportunity, like you said, to put himself on that stage, to get back into free agency next year, maybe after a run to the finals. And if he contributes deep in the playoffs, that's how guys really do get paid. Teams want to see if you can actually do something in the postseason.
Right.
And if you do, you will be rewarded as such. So I think that's the calculus behind this for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's one thing to be like I've heard this a lot from execs. I've heard this from media, but regular season players, postseason players.
Yes.
You see guys like Schroeder. You may see guys like Kelly Oubre. Guys that get an opportunity to play in games that really mean something, really matter, and they come up short. And then now you see the aftermath of that. Schroeder's still unsigned. I think he's kicking himself for not taking that extension that the Lakers offered him earlier in the season. And it just really hurts guys to have that kind of platform and you don't show up. But conversely, I think for a guy like Malik Monk, I think he has a great chance to perform at a high level because it looks like he's going to be able to slot in as like a sixth man and just provide some offense, some spark, maybe when things are kind of lagging a little bit. Maybe from the starters, you put him in 3 minutes into the game and he can get you a quick maybe 6 or 8 points. So from that point of view, I think it's a great upside signing. Even if they do lose him next season, they got to play for what's right in front of them next season. They can't play the long-term game because LeBron is coming up there in age. AD, you don't know how he's going to stay healthy. Westbrook is older, so you got to play for the short term, and I think they nailed that. But you mentioned Drummond. I guess we can go to him next. Just looking at getting a 1-year deal with the Sixers. It's kind of funny how him and Dwight just kind of swap places and how that turned out.
Yeah.
But I guess the 1-year deal doesn't surprise me. The amount doesn't surprise me. The team is a little bit surprising, though. Going to the Sixers, they were – I guess if Dwight's going to leave and you're looking for a backup to fill the void, Drummond's not a bad choice. I think he's perfect in that role as a backup. I don't think he will be overextended. I think he'll be very solid there. And I just wonder how that dynamic is going to work out with Embiid because they have some history, and I'm just interested to see how that's going to turn out in the grand scheme of things as we go through the season.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, Daryl Morey is obviously someone who has a history of wanting to compile stars together, right? And he made that move to get Carmelo out from OKC. And I think Andre Drummond's got that name brand, that sticker shock value that Daryl Morey likes to covet, and he is one of the best rebounders in league history, and he is a former All-Star. So you can get him on a 1-year veteran minimum, like that's great value. So
For sure.
he's been a bit maligned here the last couple of seasons, and he wasn't really a perfect fit in Los Angeles. But the Sixers really needed a better backup big man. So this is big for them to have someone who can be a pull of their offense, even when Joel Embiid's hurt or when he's sitting on the bench for a couple of minutes.
Right. So far, I'll kind of go through some deals that stood out to me. It doesn't seem like any of them took you off guard. Maybe that's because you have the inside access. I'm not sure, but are there any deals that, from your point of view, kind of took you by surprise? Maybe it's the amount of money, maybe it's the team. Something that was a little bit out of the ordinary from what you had heard or maybe what you expected going into free agency.
Yeah, I thought PJ Tucker would go back to Milwaukee. Last time I heard about that before Monday, it really sounded like that guaranteed money in that second year was something that they were really still haggling over. And there was definitely a framework of like 2 years, $20 million, and then from there he ends up going to Miami at 2 years, $15 million. So the second year of that contract was a player option. So I would think that giving himself the opportunity to decide whether he wants to make that money next year. I think that clearly is something that he had interest in. But yeah, I was fully expecting him to go back to the Bucks. The last I checked on that, it sounded like there's a lot of mutual interest there. But Miami must have stepped up to the table with more guaranteed money.
Yeah, I think they stepped up, and Milwaukee they had an interesting situation here with their free agents. When you bring in guys that were not on the team prior, you end up in situations where if they exceed what you expected from them, which Tucker did, Portis did, they get to free agency, you don't have bird rights. So that limits what you can offer them. I believe it's 120% of their previous salary, not that big of a raise. So then that brings us over to Bobby Portis. I'm sure that was another shock to you and most of us. I conversely thought he was going to leave Milwaukee since it looked like he was in line for a big payday, but looks like he's sticking around for at least one more season. And, he's taking a pretty big dip in his salary, only 2 years, $9 million. So, you're talking about maybe a little over $4 million for that first year of the deal. That's a huge win for Milwaukee. I think that's probably the baseline of performance you expect from him. And most likely he's going to exceed that. So another surprise for a different reason, but just goes to show you never know what can happen in free agency. And I think Milwaukee is a prime example with two guys that had, I think, the opposite decision of what we were expecting.
Yeah, no, I did expect him to go back to Milwaukee too. Yeah, I mean, I wrote about that at Bleacher Report ahead of time as well, where there was definitely talk around the league that he was going to be interested in going back to Milwaukee at that lower number. I think he clearly would have had bigger payday opportunities elsewhere, but they won a championship together. That fan base loves him.
Oh yeah,
I think $5 million is still a lot of money. I've never turned down $5 million. So
right.
I think sure it's a discount in that marketplace, but it makes sense that he would go back to try to. I mean, that's the best role he's had his entire career.
Definitely.
If you're having a blast and you're young, I mean, I don't know Bobby Portis' age off the top of my head, but I would guess he's under 28.
Most likely, yeah.
Googling it now. Yeah, I mean, he is 495. Yeah, so he's 26. So
26, yeah.
He can easily get back into free agency. I don't know the terms of his deal off the top of my head. Maybe his second is a player option too. Even if it's not, even if he's in Milwaukee for 2 more years now, he gets back into free agency at 28. Like I understand why. He just will probably. It's a bet on himself as well that he can continue to play well, and that payday will be there when he does finally reach the open market in free agency.
Yeah, you said the city loves him, and I can hear those chants in my head. The Bobby chants just kind of come right back to mind for me. That was a great situation for him. Super happy that he found a place where he's comfortable. His toughness is very much appreciated. He's in his prior stops in Chicago and New York just seemed like he was kind of out of place. He would kind of shuffle in between 4 and 5, and he's playing next to other bigs that are kind of centered in the paint, and he couldn't really find a role. But in Milwaukee, you got Brooke. Brooke loves to spread the floor. They can kind of do the inverse. Bobby can spread the floor a little bit. So those are great union, and I'm glad that all worked out for him. So if we're going to switch gears here and we're going to look at maybe some teams that disappointed. So let's kind of start with the bad news first, and then I think we can end on a higher note. And I feel like that'd be a better way to end this podcast. But if we're looking at some disappointing teams here so far, I think I had the Knicks down here for a minute. It looked like bringing some of those guys back was a little bit odd. Bringing back Rose, on that 3-year deal, 14 mil per. I wasn't quite sure if I was in favor of that because they had that void at point guard. But now his role has changed. Kemba's the starter. Rose's minutes, I think, can tail down a little bit. I don't feel comfortable with him playing 35 minutes a game at his age, but if he can come in as a sixth man, I like that. But I think now they kind of stabilized their position. I think they've had a better offseason than was initially thought. So I wouldn't say they're necessarily a disappointment at this point, although I think at one point maybe some saw them as that. You can even say some think that now. I know some people are so critical of the Knicks, but I think they've done fine here. So I wouldn't necessarily say they're disappointing now, but they kind of started that way. It looked like a little bit when they started out in free agency when the gun got shot, so to speak.
Yeah, I think to me the Pelicans were very confident at a point in time that they were going to sign Kyle Lowry, and from there, letting Lonzo Ball walk and go elsewhere. I mean, obviously they got some pieces back. They got Garrett Temple and Thomas Satoransky. And I believe Satoransky is someone that the front office is very high on. I think has a chance he starts at point guard next year. But to get that return and to bring back Devontae Graham while also sending out a future first-round pick, I personally would have preferred to just keep Lonzo Ball. And a lot of people in the NBA right now are looking at the Pelicans and wondering, where this goes from here. And there's another move to be made. But at this point, it doesn't really sound like there's a point guard coming to New Orleans at this point. They don't really have that true number one ball handler type guy. They don't. They just have a bunch of guys who can handle it. And maybe that's the idea. Maybe the idea is to just have an open space thing, and there's a bunch of guys running around setting, screen switch on the perimeter, and it's kind of like Golden State, positionless thing. But these players are not. They're not the Warriors right now, and they need a bit more juice to if the goal is to make the playoffs, they still have an uphill battle to face here. So
they do.
That's kind of a situation I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, I would agree that they're a disappointment so far. They opened up that cap space with that previous trade, bringing in Valanciunas, sending out Steven Adams, sending up Eric Bledsoe. You create that space, but the risk is, if you create that space and you don't really get somebody to fill the void at the level that I guess it's necessary for you to take the next step in the conference, it's really tough to kind of deal with that. So I feel like they're going to have a similar finish this coming season than they did in 2021. It looks like they're maybe just outside of the play-in or maybe a borderline play-in team. But, if you have a guy like Zion and there's already whispers of his camp is not happy, I don't think that's necessarily the outcome you want when you're trying to really appeal to a star player. Now, I wouldn't say he's going to ask out or anything like that, but you want to see progress year over year, and it doesn't really seem like they're doing that. It seems like they're kind of treading water. They'll be good again. They'll have highlight moments, but you just want to see more. And sometimes in free agency, you have okay signings, but if you're trying to go upwards in trajectory, okay or good is not good enough. You really got to hit that home run, and haven't really seen it from New Orleans so far.
Yeah. I think, there's clearly an emphasis on trying to make the postseason with Zion Williamson there right now. So that's just a situation that I think people are going to need to keep an eye on for the coming season.
Yeah, and while we're on the story of just not really fulfilling expectations, I would throw the Blazers into this category because, Damian Lillard I'm sure he's having his doubts, even if he hasn't formally asked out yet. The pressure is on the front office to really make a deal. And I get it. They're in the tax. They have a lot of huge contracts on the books. Norman Powell, CJ, and Dame. They're all going to be making, crazy money. Dame and CJ in particular, over $30 million a season each. So far you're looking at Cody Zeller coming in, Tony Snell, Ben McLemore. I think they're all like 1-year deals. So you're bringing in guys to kind of ride the back end of the roster, back end of the rotation. I don't really have high hopes for him so far. But Stat Muse had this funny post. I mean, they listed those 3 names as their acquisitions, and then they said, somebody check on Dame. And I think they did the same thing with Zion in New Orleans. And I'm like, yeah, I want to check on those guys because I'm sure they're not happy right now, and you expect more. I personally think they should trade CJ and try to find, something that complements Damian Lillard a bit better. How do you feel about CJ's future in Portland?
Well, Damian Lillard went on the record at Team USA in Las Vegas and said that the roster as currently constructed was not good enough to compete for a championship. And there hasn't really been major changes since. Now, they gave Norm Powell the money that they had to keep him, 5 years, $90 million, fully guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I do think CJ McCollum is clearly the most movable piece, being that Norm can't be moved right now. I can't be eligible to be traded until December or so. I mean, the only thing so far is that Portland's front office has been very resistant to speak on CJ McCollum at this time, and I think he's someone that Neil O'Shea drafted in 2013, and I don't think the Blazers are too keen on moving him right now. I just don't. So at this point in time, I don't really see where that stands. If Dame comes back from Tokyo and says, we need to make decisions here, go get me somebody, trade CJ to do it, maybe things change. I'm not saying that he will say that. I'm not saying that will happen, but I think it's going to take some type of real push in order to move CJ McCollum.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's unfortunate that they've kind of found themselves at this crossroads, because I'm sure Dame loves playing with CJ, and I think CJ and the front office and the organization have a great relationship. So it makes it tough. You don't want to move on from a guy like that. As you said, I think they're very hesitant to do that for that reason. But if you're trying to keep someone like Dame from leaving, I think you have to at least explore the possibility and see who you can get in return. So that's definitely an unfortunate situation. But in your opinion, is there another team that's been disappointing, either because they I haven't really seen bad signings, so to speak, really bad contracts. I see teams that haven't done enough, or kind of teams that have been a little bit quiet. Does someone else come to mind for you like that so far?
I think right now where the league stands, like, we're kind of in a bit of a holding pattern. Like, people want to know where Dennis Schroeder is going to land. They want to know where Kelly Oubre is going to land. But this Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard dynamic is still hanging over everything. And I think that's kind of like the big storyline here throughout the rest of the offseason. I think, Philly is only going to move Ben Simmons for a package that is dynamic enough to maybe go get Dame Lillard too. If they were to move Ben Simmons before Dame Lillard requests a trade, right? I think that's what it is. So that's kind of and the Bradley Beal situation seems to be pretty solid now, right? So I think everyone around the NBA is looking to still make a big move and to swing a big hammer. It's focused on that Dame Ben Simmons dynamic.
I would agree with that. I think I read about this somewhere. Most off seasons, we have 2 or 3 marquee players that kind of hold things up at the beginning. So maybe if like Kawhi and PG haven't signed yet, or LeBron and KD haven't signed, then other teams are kind of waiting until they push the first domino down, and then things kind of trickle from there. But as we saw this season, that wasn't the case. Things kind of got out the gate really fast because there were not that many names at the very top. I think Chris Paul made his decision very early on in the process. Obviously, Kawhi hasn't done that yet, but I think most people expect him to resign. But now I think we're actually hitting another wall where you have maybe guys that are still at a pretty high tier level. They're not tier 1, but maybe tier 2 or 3 guys that haven't signed yet. And like you said, it's kind of making things a little bit – it's trickling out a little bit slower now than it was day 1 and 2. So I definitely agree with that take. But, yeah, I mean, like another team, I feel like they need to do something. I'm not sure if they have something up their sleeve or they're just waiting for something else to happen. But I think some of Boston's moves recently have been a little disappointing. You trade Kemba. It doesn't really look like they filled that void yet from his departure. Gordon Hayward, you get the trade exception. You get Evan Fournier. He's not there anymore. So it just seems that they're lacking a little bit of depth still to this point. So I'd like to see them do something. It's kind of like Portland. You don't have many options because of your salary situation. But I don't know. I feel like they got to do something else because you have Tatum and Brown. you don't really want to waste those years. You have one of the best tandems in the league, and I really want to see them make another push. But we're going to have to wait and see if they actually do that with the limited resources they have at their disposal, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think where Boston stands, they still have some holes to fill. Celtics fans want them to do more right now, but I mean, you got to keep it in mind they traded Kemba Walker and they traded for Josh Richardson, right? So they've already made 2 moves for 2 starter level players. I think like they've already done some things to change it around the edges, but yeah, like they're still a step away and a piece away from really being a threat in the East. That's for sure. They need some more firepower. It doesn't seem like it's going to come sometime soon. I think Boston seems to be projecting that they're going to clear some cap space here and save up some flexibility for next summer when they can go into 2022 and try to make potentially a play at Bradley Beal. But if he stays in Washington, someone else.
Yeah, they're going to have some decisions to make, but luckily their 2 big stars are on long-term contracts, so they're not under the pressure of like a New Orleans or a Portland or something like that. They definitely have more options to explore and kind of push their cap space out for future years. But one last segment here. If we're going to talk about the worst teams so far this offseason, we got to talk about the best. We're looking at some of the most impressive teams here so far. I'll go ahead and get my fandom out there right now. Miami's situation, I think, has been very positive. Made some great signings. I definitely want to say that I think Oladipo is one of the best value signings out there so far. Very low risk, high reward. So I think that he has been excellent as far as like a value proposition. PJ Tucker, we talked about earlier. I think that's another move that's got them that could push them towards the upper tier of like a tier 2 Eastern Conference team. Not quite maybe like a Brooklyn team, but something close to that in terms of their core overall. So I think Miami manages their assets better than almost any team in the league. And given some of the situations they've been in with bad contracts and limited cap space, they always seem to find a way to make a splashy signing, Kyle Lowry this summer. So I think they deserve a lot of credit. And I'm excited to see how this roster kind of coalesces as we get into the next season.
No one's not giving Miami credit. I think they had a hell of an offseason, and that's a team that no one's going to want to play in the playoffs on like a back-to-back. Like to go through Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, like that's not going to be
that's a battle right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Heat are right back at the forefront of the Eastern Conference. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make it out next year. I think they got a really good chance of making their second finals in 3 years. And they won't be done yet. And they brought back Duncan Robinson as well. I think the moves around the edges they can keep doing. So, yeah, I would absolutely keep an eye on the Miami Heat as a real threat to come out of the Eastern Conference next season.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we're mentioning moves on the margins, the Brooklyn Nets were already a really good team, but they've made some kind of savvy signings kind of in those small areas. Like, you bring in James Johnson to replace Jeff Green. You go get Patty Mills. Like, I think that's another signing that is just like hats off to them, man. Like, you go out and get a spark plug like that to come off the bench. Let's just say Kyrie misses 15 or 20 games again, because it seems like that's the norm for him now every season. But if you bring in Patty Mills and he can provide you with a little bit of offensive juice, give you 10, 12, 15 points, fantastic situation for them. Bruce Brown coming back on the qualifying offer. That's really going to fortify that. I guess he can start or come off the bench. Excellent move. Blake Griffin coming back on a pretty cheap deal. Really good signings too. So I like what the Nets have done. The pieces fit really well. I think they fit better than the Lakers. And I think they should be the favorite to come out the East, just because they maintain the star core and they go in and make some really good moves. Not a lot of money. So they're definitely one of my impressive teams here so far through the free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I was just on the phone with an assistant coach in the Eastern Conference who said, Patty Mills to Brooklyn is something should be getting more attention. He's a champion, a great locker room guy, obviously a very good player still, great shooter. He's going to be perfect. He's going to be perfect there. So I think there's a lot of talk about Bryn Forbes potentially playing that role, and I think getting Patty Mills instead, no knock on Bryn Forbes. Obviously, he went right to San Antonio and filled Patty Mills' spot. I think getting that veteran talent and someone who's been there and won titles is going to be a massive addition to that rotation.
Absolutely. I mean, Damian Lillard came out here and said that, guys are different in international competition Guys like Patty Mills and Evan Fournier come out here and the Olympics, they drop 20, 25 points. So of course, Patty Mills is not going to have that same impact for Brooklyn, but if he does happen to get more minutes due to injury or something like that, I think he can be counted on to put up a lot of points in a hurry, that's Brooklyn's MO. They just outscore the competition consistently. So I think he's a perfect fit there. I'll give you the floor. Do you have a team in mind that has really caught your attention due to a few moves they made, splashy ones, moves on the margins, something that they deserve a lot of credit for?
We've talked about Chicago. We've talked about Miami. I mean, the Knicks, I think the Kemba trade is interesting. Or not trade, the buyout acquisition is interesting. Now, at the same time, it's going to be really curious if his knees can check out. I mean,
yeah.
The Thunder were projecting optimism they'd be able to trade him before the season. So for them to buy him out, I don't know if that means that he was actually someone that they were going to be able to trade again, right? So that probably means that the medical intel from other teams wasn't that superlative. So if that's the case, and that means the Knicks have a lot of work to do to get him healthy and keep him healthy. So that's one thing that everyone wants to celebrate the decision, but I'm hesitant to see that Kemba Walker is going to be playing 80 games for the Knicks this season. I want him to. I think Kemba's electric, and it'd be awesome to see him back in the Garden again after what he did, obviously, in college. But now, I'm going in with tepid optimism that he'll actually be a fixture of that starting lineup because we just haven't seen that for the last couple of years. And he's the best guys in the league by all accounts. But I've spent some time with him. Everyone who's met Kemba Walker loves Kemba Walker. I hope he stays healthy. I hope it works out for him. I truly do.
Me
but
too.
Just being like an objective observer of the league, like I still have my doubts and my skepticisms. Again, I am rooting for it to work out.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. He's an electric player. I'm glad he's able to go to an area he's familiar with. And I think it's a good signing for that amount of money. Of course, the Thunder, having to eat that dead salary for a few years, is going to hurt. But, ultimately, you're looking at New York's situation. They had a hole to fill. Luckily, they have a guy like Derrick Rose that's used to starting, used to being thrown into the fire. So if Kemba needs a little bit more time to get ready for the season, you do have a Derrick Rose to come in there and fill the void for 5-10 games, something like that. So I think their situation is set up. Oh, and Quickly, you can't forget about Quickly, another young guy that can fill some minutes. So they're uniquely positioned to kind of withstand that absence. So I think that's a really good story for them. So if we're going to discuss one more winner here, let's just finish this out with, another team that's been really impressive so far. I want to say that the Lakers are. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on this one. It's not quite sure what to make of it sometimes, but I think ultimately getting those young guys like Monk and Kendrick Nunn and Taylor Horton Tucker on board is going to make a big difference. The older signings, Melo, take it or leave it. But I think the signings they made recently with some of those value guys coming off the bench, just trying to up their value, Kendrick Nunn for 2 years, $10 million. I think those are really solid. So I would say they're a winner so far. Remains to be seen how the season's going to turn out. I think it could be really good or it could be a train wreck. But, just looking at it on paper, some of the value moves they made, Ariza on a minimum. I think they've done a good job ultimately. So I'm excited to see how this turns out because it's going to be drama filled as always. But I think they deserve some credit for utilizing some limited resources to get some guys that can provide a lot more than their dollar value says they should.
Yeah, I think the Wizards, are another team I'm interested and intrigued by what they did. Bringing on Dinwiddie, KCP, the Kyle Kuzma addition, trading for Aaron Holiday, Montrezl Harrell. I'm curious to see what his role can be. It's definitely interesting. The Wizards got better, and I wonder how much better, but they got better. So I'm curious to see how much better that turns out to be.
Yeah, one last note. Dinwiddie was acquired via sign-in trade, and it looks like there was a ton of teams involved in this deal. And I saw somebody tweet out yesterday. I can't remember if it was Bobby Marks or someone like that, but they said it was one of the biggest deals in NBA history. I don't think it quite qualified as the biggest, but it was like 9 players changed teams, and there's multiple draft picks moved and things like that. So really incredible development, and I guess that's why it took 3 days for the deal to be completed because there's a lot of details there.
For sure.
So definitely complicated.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's been interesting to see these executives get smarter and front offices be more creative over the last couple of years. And I think to bring this all back together and tie a nice bow on it, I think that started with all the analytical guys rising to power. Daryl Morey coming to power and Sam Presti in Oklahoma City, and then all their disciples. They saw Sam Hinkie in Philly and Rob Hennigan in Orlando, and then Ryan McDonough coming from Boston to Phoenix, and Pete D'Alessandro in Sacramento and David Griffin in Cleveland. Like, that's why I wrote the book that I wrote. Like, there was such a shifting tectonic plate happening where, these analytical, nerdy guys were coming to power in the NBA and really trying to bring, cap strategy and, law degrees and calculators and Excel spreadsheets to building NBA rosters. And now the league is at, it's big game hunting in that regard. And I tried to cover that dynamic in the book a lot.
Yeah. Guys, go pick up that book. I mean, that's kind of the stuff I crave, the analytics, the cap stuff. That's what I'm trying to get involved in right now. So definitely going to be a good read for anybody out there that's involved in it. But, I'm sure you got some more reporting to do, Jake. You got got to promote that book, got some business to attend to. So I'll let you go. But thanks again for joining us on Business Casual. Really great time to discuss these signings. Anything, I know I plugged the book earlier. Anything else you wanted to kind of shout out or let the listeners know about before you head out?
No, yeah. And the book is, again, called Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. My publisher, Triumph Books, has a discount code right now called Fisher30, my last name 30. And you can get at this watch company, La Touraine, LATOURAINE. Promo code Built to Lose. You get a free book with the purchase of a watch, which is pretty cool. I talked to over 300 people for the book, players, agents, coaches, executives. So there's a ton of new info and information that you're not going to find anywhere else. So that's my pitch. And if you guys enjoyed my insight today, I would really appreciate it if you cop the copy. And Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold, my publisher, Triumph Books. Go get one now.
Love it, guys. Love it, guys. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description of the podcast as well if you're listening on social platforms. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us on Business Casual. Appreciate Jake's presence here. For Business Casual, it's going to be bcbasketball.info on our website. And then BC Basketball 2 is the Twitter and Instagram handle if you want to give us a follow and check out some of the content we have coming your way. But until next time, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the Olympic gold medal round coming up. The rest of this free agency is going to be a fun ride. And we hope to see you back here next time on the podcast for some more NBA content. So see you soon, everybody. Take care.